nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda was to be an ethics commission appointment, but I've been advised that Francis O'Reilly has withdrawn his appointment to the ethics commission, so we're not going to be discussing that. So the next item is a report from the Joint Retirement Investment Board. We'll take that up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's that? So, it's been a while since I've been here. I think that's about a year, right? Everyone has their packet or remembers from their packet. Just two separate documents. There's one for the police and fire and town employees. That's the main pension, and then OPEB is the other one. Total assets are about, not about, as of June 30th, they were $391 million. I can say as of last month, it's up to like 393. We have not done much as far as move allocations in the past year. We're still have the same asset allocation and diversity that we've had in the past. No new managers as of June 30th. Since this report has come out, we have removed a fixed income manager and simplified things. So if you were to look at it today, you'd see that in our domestic fixed income space, we just have Sykes. In our global one, we just have PIMCO. And that was really a performance-based thing, and it really didn't make sense to have an extra manager that wasn't doing anything except following the index. But otherwise, I would say that everything is the same as you saw last year. Moving to returns, you can see how each one performed overall, but everybody just wants to see the final number. So our June 30th number was just under 5% for the fund, and you can see the 3-year, 5-year, and 7-year numbers, and also be advised that our assumed discount rate is 7%, so that's how your what we used to call the ARC, and now it's called the, it's essentially how we compute what we have to make for a pension contribution each year. So, and it gets blended, so when we under, like in this past fiscal year with this, the 5%, it's not 7, what happens is that's 1/5 of something that gets blended in to calculate how much you have to make for your sort of mortgage payment for the year for the pension. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Thank you for coming. I've been reading recently about companies that are actively promoted climate denial information. One of them is Vanguard. And I was just wondering, do you ever consider, I know there's a lot of Vanguard here in the portfolio, and they are actively spreading climate denial information. Does that kind of issue concern you?
I'll say I've not read that. I try to keep abreast of things, so I mean, you could forward that to me. I do know that Vanguard votes their proxies, which is responsible governance behavior. They also are one of the lowest cost providers of index product, which is all we use them for. So from a fiduciary standpoint, I don't see a whole lot of benefit to us moving from, say, to Vanguard to State Street when it might cost us a little bit more and we're just getting index exposure. So we have an ESG policy, so it's not something that we take lightly. We do believe that environmental and social and governance issues are important from an investment standpoint, especially on a long-term basis. You know, you can just see that avoiding bad behaviors will cause you not to have outside losses, which should produce better returns in the long run. So we make sure all our managers have a policy in place, and Vanguard does. So I'd have to see.
I'll pass you the article. It was in the Smithsonian, and it makes me think that maybe they're overexposed in gas and oil.
they're exposed, we're exposed to whatever's in the index.
I understand
So,
that.
yeah.
I'll forward you the information.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thanks for coming and thanks for the report.
Oh, I was going to do OPEB, but
Oh, okay, sorry.
but if you, there's nothing really exciting there except that it's growing rapidly, which is good because it's well underfunded. We're over 50 million today. As of this report, it was 49 million. This has changed, and it's evolving, and it's becoming more similar to the distribution you see in the regular pension. The idea being that both are long-term obligations, both you want to be diversified. So we couldn't get that diversification when OPEB was smaller because of minimum requirements for a lot of the funds. They're separate trusts. But as this has gotten bigger, we've managed to leverage that into the same exposure that we have. So you'll see real estate is the new one now, and we actually have some new, as of today, we have new stock allocations that match what's going on here. So this should, as it gets bigger and bigger, resemble in both returns and mix to what you see in the main one. But otherwise, you see what we have today. Returns similar to the main fund, except a little higher because right now OPEB has a little bit more equity exposure because of that lack of diversification, which is good when equity markets are going up. Might be a bad thing if markets turn down. But that's it for OPEB. If there are any questions on that?
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thanks.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Next, we have the sale of a portion of 135 Pine Creek Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM. My name is John Fallon. I represent the owner of the property at 123 Pine Creek. I think you have a rather sizable package on this, so I'll just try to be brief. 123 Pine Creek is a 5,000 square foot non-conforming property. It's improved with a single family home. It's adjacent to a parcel owned by the town at 135 Pine Creek Avenue. That's a 13,000 square foot parcel. It has on it, as you'll see from some of the plans, a pump station that is operated by the town. We've entered into an agreement with the town to have the town convey to 123 800 square feet. The purchase price, which is evidenced by the contract of sale, which has been deposited that you have, is $66,000. That purchase price was arrived at by way of an independent appraisal by Karen and Fazio. It comes out to $82.50 per square foot, which is certainly very good for the market. The reason we've done this and pursued this with the town, if you look at the plan, is that 123 is quite narrow, and the 800 square feet will provide additional width to this narrow lot, which will allow better access and safer function of the driveway, providing access to the house and the garage that are already there. So from our perspective, 123, it benefits considerations of convenience and safety. From the town's perspective, it will not have any adverse effect on the impact on 135. The property will still be a very oversized parcel at 12,200 square feet, and it won't have any adverse impact on the use of the pump station. You have the appraisal, which is detailed, which was the basis of the purchase price. You have the contract. This has previously received the unanimous approval from the Board of Selectmen and the recommendation, a favorable unanimous recommendation from the TPZ under 824. Selectman Bateson, I think, had a very good suggestion, which I think is probably evidenced in your material. That's totally at your discretion, but that the proceeds of this sale, $66,000, be earmarked for the Grace Richardson Open Space Trust Fund. I personally thought that was a very good suggestion on his behalf. So we hope you would approve this. As I said, it will help the property owner significantly in terms of maneuverability of the garage without having any adverse impact on the town property or the pump station, and it certainly represents a fair market valuation, $66,000 for 800 square feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Is the Grace Richardson Trust Fund different from the Smith Richardson Foundation?
I can't speak, I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to defer to Mr. Carey, who may be along later. I see Mr. Hurley in the audience. He may know because he knows everything. But Drew, I couldn't answer that. I don't know.
They're on the climate denier list, too.
I think, therefore, I hope it is the Grace Richardson Open Space Trust.
Yes.
That was what Mr. Bateson said, so I assume they're two different entities.
I think that they are two different things, yeah.
I defer to you. We'll give you
Okay.
the money, and whatever you do with it is fine.
So that our members are aware, the resolution does call for going into the Smith Richardson, the Grace
Smith?
Richardson, sorry, Grace Richardson Trust Fund.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what the resolution calls for. Further questions from the members? Seeing none, John, you have the next one. You
I
have,
do. Thank you very much.
accept donation of 1150 Westport Turnpike.
Yeah, this is actually, I feel like I'm representing the TPZ here. This was a two-lot subdivision on approximately 11 acres on 1150 Westport Turnpike. It was approved last June. It has two oversized building lots, but a very substantial open space parcel, 3.66 acres. As you know, under the subdivision regulations, the TPZ can make recommendation with regard to the disposition of mandated open space. They can mandate that it goes into an association or that it be conveyed to the town as town open space. Here, the P&Z found the open space to be valuable. It has connectivity with other town properties. It's a nice, large parcel, 3.66. So the TPZ in their subdivision approval, and the map has been recorded, recommended that the open space be conveyed to the town. That has gone to the Land Acquisition Committee as well. They have mandated or endorsed that the open space go to the town, and I believe the Conservation Commission has as well. So we're just following up on the TPZ approval, and this is a meaningful piece of town open space that will be conveyed to the town subject to your approval.
Any questions on the donation of 1150 Westport Turnpike? Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara, District 7. Are there warranties that there are no environmental defects with the land?
Yes, it was subject to a conservation inland wetlands permit, and it certainly, will be conveyed to the town with standard warranties of that kind. But there was a very thorough environmental investigation of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thanks for the I'm sorry, Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Was that where the landscaping business was? I was trying to figure out where that was. No.
No, this is just it's been a vacant piece of property for a very long time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Next, we're going to take up the Board of Education Maintenance and Transportation Facility lease. This is item 2 on the supplemental. It's the item on the second supplemental agenda that we issued.
Good evening, Mike Cummings, Superintendent of Schools, with Angeles Papa George, our Executive Director of Operations. We're here tonight to speak with the RTM about our proposed lease at 3400 Fairfield Avenue in Bridgeport. Essentially, this lease, this facility would replace the property currently at Meadow Street, as well as offer some other functions for the Board of Ed, including the reduction or the removal of the transportation trailer down at the bus yard, and also offer up some additional storage space for us. So we're here for any questions you might have.
Any questions from our members? Representative Iacono.
Pamela Iacono, District 8. Thank you for being here this evening. I see that the building's owned by an LLC. Do you know who the principals of the LLC are? Or at least the main principals?
I do not, but one of the landlords is here. If we want to ask him, he can probably provide that information.
So would that be Mr. Hirsch?
That would be Mr. Hirsch directly behind us.
Thank you. Mr. Hirsch, would you mind sharing with us who the principals of the LLC are?
For the record, Arthur Hirsch. The principals of the Frugal LLC are Arthur R. Hirsch, Philip C. Kraft, and Ray Arabia. We are the three principals of Frugal LLC.
Thank you very much. I just wanted that disclosed for the record. Appreciate it. I just wanted to let you know that I've read through all the information. I was very happy to get your memo, Mr. Cummings, earlier in the month indicating that you had found space and that it was actually going to be space that was, quite frankly, much better than what you have right now.
Yes.
So to me, this was a situation that was lemons, and now we have lemonade. I'm really glad you did this. I'm really glad we thought outside the box. This is exactly the kind of thing that we need to be doing. It's great to have new sets of eyes on this. Mr. Papageorge, thanks for joining the administration. Great job. Really very impressed, and I'm happy that we have some new eyes on all of this. I think this is a great thing for the town.
Thank you. Mr. Papageorge deserves much of this credit.
Thank you.
Representative Gerber?
Hi, Bill Gerber, District 2. Thanks for being here, Superintendent Cummings and Mr. Papageorge. Question about the moving costs. I think the Board of Selectmen approved the entering into the lease, and I guess that's what we'll be doing, but you expect to have about $142,000 of moving costs. And are you expecting that to come out of your operating budget of the Board of Ed, or are you expecting the town to cover that? And if so, has anyone on the Board of Finance sort of agreed to cover that cost next year?
We will be approaching the Board of Finance. I've had conversations with Mr. Flynn. I believe that will be taken up at a November meeting. He has made no promises.
So he's made no promises, and there's no sort of process for getting a commitment from him at this point. We're just going to have to wait till the moving takes place. And when will that be, actually?
We are looking to take ownership of the property on November 1st, use the month of November to ready the space, and then our intent is to move in on December 1st. Our lease at Meadow Street ends at the end of November.
Is it Board of Ed's expectation that those will not be coming out, that we won't have to shift funds around in order to pay for that out of the operating budget?
We are concerned about the cost of this. We obviously did not budget for it. We understand certainly the town's expectation that we vacate the property at Meadow Street, but that essentially that expectation came after our budget was adopted. So we are going to seek relief from the town around this.
Okay, so we can look forward to that.
I'll look forward to that.
Question about the square footage. So the Meadow Street, the building, you had 6,260 square feet. This is 12,316, so there's difference about 6,000. Will you use all of that with storage and transportation, or will you have excess for other purposes?
No, that will cover maintenance with our wood shop, and then transportation and storage will take up the remainder. It's not actual storage, it's our central storage location, which is where we ship all of our custodial supplies out of to the individual schools as needed.
Okay, so just looking at the, Mr. Papageorge, thank you for your memo that got sent around. I think it was a couple weeks ago, but it looks like, just if I'm doing the math correctly, this net of moving and what you would have had to spend to sort of upgrade the portable, this is probably going to cost somewhere around $370,000 more than you otherwise would have had to have spent. So sort of over 10 years is an incremental cost of about $370,000.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that sounds about accurate.
I did have a question about the unknown aspects of the, I mean, you have the base rent, but you also have the this is a triple net lease.
It is a triple net lease. We're at 1025 is the base rent.
Right.
Working with the landlords, we estimate about $2.06 would be the triple net costs. It's a limited information that we have because they haven't owned the building for a full year, so they don't have accurate information, but we used as much information as we could to come up with the numbers.
In the, well, so I won't ask Mr. Hirsch since it's unknown at this point, but I have noticed that Bridgeport tax escalation is somewhat higher than Fairfield. So you do have exposure to escalation in Bridgeport taxes. I think you're covering about 42% per the lease.
Correct.
So that may, I mean, probably will be an additional increase over the 10-year period, assuming Bridgeport continues to escalate as it has over the last 5-10 years.
Correct.
Okay. So looking at this correctly, you are probably going to be paying, let's say, call it $400,000 more than you would otherwise have, but you're happy to, and you have some risk of exposure from Bridgeport taxes. Would there be exposure to insurance escalation in Bridgeport versus Fairfield?
We reached out to Kerma, and we're still waiting. They didn't seem to think there would be any, but they're just double checking their information.
Okay. So hopefully not, but mainly probably taxes. So you're happy with, I mean, I guess you didn't have a choice to enter into this lease because the Julian Meadow Street lease was rejected by the Board of
Correct.
Selectmen.
We're currently on a month-to-month with the Julian property, so we're unknown month-to-month what's going to happen over there.
And I didn't listen to those Board of Selectmen meetings. Do you know, other than the fact that obviously the town doesn't like Julian, is that the primary reason for not entering into that lease?
As far as I know, it was back in June, July, when they chose to take no action on the lease. There was a 10-year lease put before them that was before you guys that approved by RTM, went back to the Board of Selectmen, and they chose to take no action on it at that time.
They didn't explain why, other than, I mean, obviously the sentiment against Julian.
It was pretty much Julian, that was what we understood.
But you had never had any issues with Julian as a lessor?
I had not. I've not been in this position that long. I took
Okay.
over May 1st.
So essentially, it seems to me that we're entering into this lease. It sounds like a good lease, but it's going to be, you know, probably about $400,000 more over 10 years, which is not insignificant, but we don't really have a choice, so that's what we're doing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Iacono?
But just for the record, you're getting more square footage, you're saving money because you're getting rid of the transportation portable that was falling apart and needed investment, and you're also consolidating storage over there, correct?
Correct.
Right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Representative Gerber?
Just for the
Unless
record,
Mr.
the
Durrell is
400,000.
stretching? Okay.
Just for the record, the 400,000 difference includes any savings from, you know, that includes the fact that you would have had to pay, I mean, I have the numbers here that you laid out, 149.7 to replace the portable. Storage was 16.8 per year. So the 400,000 factors that in. So we will be paying an additional 400,000 over 10 years.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Next, we have the two items that relate to the berm and the town WPCA matter. Linda, what are you here on? You're on? Okay, yes, we'll do yours, the transfer requests. So this is item 1 on the first supplemental agenda.
My name is Linda Gardner, and I'm here on behalf of Bob Mayer, who is at the Board of Finance meeting this evening. This is a request to transfer revenue. And in order to transfer revenue, it requires an increase in the budget. Hence, you are being asked to look at this item. That means you increase revenue and expenditure by the same amount. Your schedule in front of you shows the increase in the 3 revenue items as a result of a positive variance in those revenue item operations by June 30, 2019, and the corresponding increase in the expenditure item, which is the debt service. That debt service is will go into a reserve account for use against future taxation or whatever is decided. So it's to be placed in reserve. So your 3 revenue items equal your expenditure item. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Any questions from the members? Representative Garskoff?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. So why is it debt service? Why, can you just explain why that's the name of the account it's going to?
We have a debt account, so we want to increase the expenditure in the debt account and then sweep that into the reserve account in order to preserve the money for future years, for future use, I mean.
So it's just a way to be able to sweep it
It's
out.
the mechanics, right.
Okay.
It's just
Thank you.
mechanical. Mhm.
Other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, good evening, and
Okay.
thank you for taking me.
So next we'll take up items 5 and 6 on the agenda.
Hi, I'm Bill Hurley, the Fairfield Engineering Manager. I'm here to present the what we call the wastewater treatment plant hardening or protection, flood protection for the treatment plant and the other town buildings that are in the area, the conservation, the dog ward, and shelter there as well, and the compost facility. We're coming to the boards here because we have to increase the amount of appropriation and bond appropriation, approximately $4 million. This would cover, the original one was $3 million, and it goes up to $7 million, $7.4 million. The couple of things that I just want to highlight here is that the town's Water Pollution Control Authority has agreed to pay for the cost of the project. The town does have a $750,000 grant associated with this project as well. Just to give you a background, I assume everybody read the 14 points, but just in case you haven't, I'll just highlight real quick. During Superstorm Sandy, portions of the treatment plant and surrounding facilities were submerged in 2 feet of water due to the coastal storm surge. The wastewater treatment plant did not treat the influent at full levels for more than a week and exceeded the required discharge limits due to the flooding and the damage caused by the storm. The facility lies within a FEMA designated or defined special flood hazard area. And if the storm surge had gone just a little bit higher, the south side of the treatment plant would have been fully submerged. This would have resulted in damage to the entire pump station, the influent building, the administration building, transformers, electrical and mechanical systems, and the plant infrastructure, causing an approximate $35 million in damages. The proposed project is to construct an earthen berm and a steel sheathing barrier and stormwater pump station to protect the treatment plant and other critical facilities in the area against future flood events. In addition, the flood protection would enable the installation of a microgrid to provide greater level of storm resiliency by eliminating the dependence on outside power during major storm events. The earthen berm and the flood wall barrier would be constructed around the whole treatment plant, the animal control facility, the fire training center, and the conservation department workshop. I believe the contractor can start in November as the contract bid is still valid. I'm sorry, let me make one correction. I said 750. That's another project I'm working on. We actually have $3.3 million in grant money. Let me make that correction, that's a big one. Sorry about that. That was another project that I'm working on. So, yeah. So if not approved, the state grant for the microgrid and obviously the $3.3 million grant would be compromised, and then the town would be required to do the plant upgrade, and we'd have to do those upgrades to what they call the 500-year storm, which would cost approximately $10 to $20 million more. Sorry about that. I mean, I have a timeline here. I have a timeline here if you want me to go into further detail.
That's okay.
Open up to
We'll open up to questions. Representative
Sure.
Iacono?
Sorry, so just to get back to the bottom line appropriation, the town is only having to contribute out of their side of the coffers $385,000, is that?
That's correct.
Okay, and
The
the rest will,
remaining
then the rest
after
will
the
be
grant is
absorbed
from
by
the
the
treatment.
grant and then the WPCA.
Right.
Okay, so our obligation here tonight is $385,000.
Which has already been approved.
Gotcha, thank you.
Further questions? Representative Lopez.
Hi, Erin Lopez, District 2. If, I think I understand reading through this, the reason that the cost changed over time as you're going through the process is because there was originally going to be a dike, and that didn't, the plans didn't pan out for that, and now it switched to a berm. Is that what happened in the
Yeah,
timing?
if I'll show it on the map here real quick. Essentially, here's the treatment plant over
Bill,
here.
could you slide back a little bit?
The treatment plant is here, the fire training center, the conservation building, the dog water over here. Originally, all this was going to be earth berm. The only parts really of earth berm are now here. So all this is going to be the steel sheathing. And so that's why, and the steel sheathing is $1.7 million. So that was a major component of the increase. And then the other thing that we added was, as we got closer, we realized that through the DEP permit, they're considering any flood control structure as like a dam. And so therefore, we have to have more detailed inspection and construction administration. So that's been added. And then we added a 20% contingency of $1.1 million. So rose-colored glasses, we won't need all this amount of money, but we want to, make sure we have everything in place.
Further questions? Representative Gerber?
Hi, Mr. Hurley. Bill Gerber, District 2. I think first of all, I have a question. Were you involved in this all the way through, or were you kind of put on this recently?
It's been a combination. It was DPW, but the engineering department was involved in securing the grants.
Okay.
And we've been following the project through, yes.
Like I've heard recent noise about the increased costs, and a lot of people didn't know it was happening. It was sort of thrown at people in August, or at least that was the impression I got. But so if you don't mind sort of walking through, so we started with a $3.088 million estimate. I think that was 2015, but then it went to 5.1 million. Based on an estimate from, I think, an engineer in September of 2019, but then it was revised again to 7.4 million in November, September of 2018, then revised up to the 7.4 in November of August of 2019. So could you just, I just want to be able to write down.
Yeah, sure.
Sort of, the dike, sort of, that we couldn't use the.
Yeah, what happened was and I'll do a quick timeline here.
Yeah.
2014, we submitted to the state for the grant for what we call the hardening project. In 2015, the $2.3 million grant was approved by the RTM. In 2016, we commenced the design. In November 2016, progress meeting with the consultant to discuss the results of the testing, and that's where we were looking at now alternatives for the earthen dike. The testing that was done, the boring tests, realized that the weight of the berm would actually start to settle and sink. And so it was recommended that we do the steel sheathing as the major flood protection.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm on your write-up here. Let's see if I can get is that page 2?
Yes, right, correct.
What was the date of that?
That was November 16 on the top of page 2.
Okay, November 16.
2016.
Okay.
Then the dam safety permit was submitted to the DEP in April of 2017. In October of 2017, we had a progress meeting with the consultant to proceed with construction drawings and review the comments made by the department, Connecticut Deep. Then the Army Corps of Engineers permit was submitted in 2018. The final design for the treatment hardening plant was completed in June 2018. We applied for an additional approximately $1 million on July 2018. Then in November of 2018, the contractor submits the revised, actually I should back up a little bit. August 2018 was the bid opening. The contractor was selected based on the low bid. In November of 2018, they submitted a revised bid, which what we called value engineering, where we lowered the price a little bit. In August of 2019, we received the Army Corps of Engineers permit. In 2019, August 2019, we received the revised cost estimate that now included the permanent pump stations that were added to the project or re-added to the project, added contingencies, the project oversight and administration, and then the fill that would have to be brought into the site. One of the value engineering was to use the town supplied fill, and we're not going there, so.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions. Was I saw earth and fill, and was that part of the reason for the increase in cost when you realized you couldn't?
That's
so that
correct.
was I think it was like 600,000.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, 671 or something like that.
So 671 was a part of the increase going from the 5.1 to the 7.4, I would guess. 'Cause
Right.
It looked like it fell between there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in real, I might even have it here. In real simplistic terms, maybe a little bit quicker, is the original estimate in 2014 was 3.1 million. The revised estimate in 2018 was 5.6 based on those soil testings, state permit conditions, primarily being that the soil was deemed inadequate to support the earthen berm, and we required the steel sheathing. We lowered that price, 500,000 for value engineering, but then we had to bring the cost back up based on what we'd call purchase fill instead of using the town fill. And then 1.6 million of it would be for contingency and inspection, project administration. So the majority of it is the town fill, the contingency, the inspection, and then the change from earth berm to the steel sheeting. Those are the major 4 components of why it went up.
I have a few more questions. Should I ask them, or should I?
Go ahead.
Just about the process. So the WPCA, like for example, now whenever I see a contractor being hired, I've got questions. So Holzner is the engineering firm?
That's correct, based on low bid.
Were they hired by the town, or are they hired by WPCA? What is the process for hiring? Was it sort of the regular, the ideal bidding process of the town? Were there multiple bids, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the purchasing agent would have all that information, but if I can relate that it was a standard bid, contract bid, documents, plans, everything, and then the contractors provided contract bids, and then the lowest one, the most qualified one and lowest one was selected. I believe.
Who selected it, though? Was it WPCA?
No,
it's the town process.
The town, the purchasing,
So Board of Selectmen, and then.
Well, the purchasing did based on the low bid.
But Board of Selectmen reviewed the contract and approved it?
That, I don't know that. But I could just tell you it was a standard bid project, much like we do projects for bridges and all the others. These are contract bids. And another thing to let everybody know is whenever there's grant money involved, I mean, there's state auditors, we have to go through all these processes to make sure that we meet not only the town guidelines, but state guidelines, and sometimes even federal.
But I guess I'm showing my ignorance about WPCA, if you don't mind. Like, how legally is that set up to run these processes on its own, or is it just sort of, it's not an entity of the town per se, is it? I don't know if anyone has any insight into that.
Mr. Moderator, Representative Gerber seems to have questions about process and things that aren't relevant to the approval of this. Is it possible for him maybe to have a conversation with Mr. Hurley offline about this?
That's probably appropriate.
Okay. Do you mind if I steal your question, Sharon? I mean, one of my questions is that actually was my colleague Sharon Pastilli asked me was, we say 300,000 or plus is the cost of the town, but a lot of the difference that's not made up in grants is paid for by townspeople through their
User
sewer
fees, right.
Right. Okay.
And I'll even answer a little bit real quick here, is that whenever the bid opening, it gets reviewed by the state, it gets reviewed by our consultant, I'm pretty sure it got reviewed by the WPCA, because even, they were always going to pay a certain, portion of it as well. And so the contract and then the bid was reviewed by several entities. But as they alluded to, we can talk more offline. I have no problem.
Okay.
I'll stay for that.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is the 216-102 that was transferred from Penfield to WPCA to this project. Can you explain a little bit about how that works and whether that means that Penfield will not get that money back from the state, hopefully, or eventually? Or is that gone forever?
For that particular grant, I believe it's gone forever. Included in the packet was the letter from the Department of, the Department of Housing. Rather than lose that money, we were able to transfer that money from one project to the other. The Penfield project, at that time, I believe the DEP wasn't totally on board with some of the proposals. And so rather than risk losing that money, the Department of Housing did allow us to transfer that money to a project that they knew was going to happen.
Okay, so I'm not really up on what we are hoping to get back on Penfield, but whatever that is, we should be subtracting out this 216-102 if it's still listed as.
Yeah, I'd have to check further on that. But this was from the Department of Housing money. The other grant might be from a different entity. I'd have to look into that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Further questions? Representative Walt? Okay, Representative Garskoff.
Thank you. Mr. Hurley, can you very simply explain why we're going from a berm to a steel and wall or whatever it is, and can you explain what it is we're going to in very simple terms, please, if possible?
Well, the berm typically is, say, 10-foot wide at the top, and then you have to go on slopes, okay, like, say, 1-on-1 or 2-on-1. So the bottom ends up being 20, 25 feet. A couple of things with that is, and it would vary in height, probably since we're at elevation, and these are just quick guesstimates of 5, and we have to go up to like 17, that's 12 feet of fill. So we're really, now I'm thinking 10, 12, like 36 something feet wide. So now you're going more into the wetlands, which the DEP usually doesn't like to do. And then the actual weight of that structure now being so high, and typically soil is about 120 pounds per cubic feet, would actually push down like a surcharged load, push down, and so over time it would settle. And since most of the area is organic muck, although some of it's fill, but I mean, previous fill, from the 30s or whatever, But the organics wouldn't have the bearing capacity or the strength to hold the soil. And so we would get a lot of sloughing, there'd be a lot of maintenance on that, and as I said, we would settle, and over time, if it settles 2 feet down, and then, there goes your freeboard, and, if there's wave action, that's gonna be the weak point that it comes in. So the steel sheathing are driven sheets of steel, and so the disturbance, maybe they're only, they're usually corrugated, so they're only maybe a foot wide, and so there's a lot less land disturbance for that. And you can set them at a certain height a little bit easier than you would a berm as well. So.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Representative Walk?
Jay Walk, District 5. Before I ask you a quick question, I want to thank you very, very much. This is off the topic just for this project, but for the project that you did on Kings Highway, it's a wonder now that it's finished and it came to tuition. I have to thank you very, very much because I requested a traffic light with a signal on it to turn left, and that happened. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome. And the other thing, so just my question is, so the town hired a separate company to take the muck out instead of dumping it, you said, into town?
Oh, no. Since there's still a portion of the project that has a earth berm, we'll be bringing in fill, and then sometimes with the sheathing, you have to backfill it, and so we'll be bringing in fill from another source.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Representative Bastilli?
Sharon Bastilli, District 3. So I just wanted to clarify, based on where you said this berm would go on the map, it's actually going to be protecting more than just the water treatment facility, right? So it'd be protecting like all the other town buildings that are included in that entire area?
That's correct. Yeah, the composting building, it would protect the fire training center, it would protect the conservation workshop, and the shelter or dog warden,
And then I had one additional question. So for the amount that is allocated to the WPCA, how would that be charged back to houses on their sewer bills, and like over how many months or years or whatever? Like how would that be treated?
One thing is that the treatment plant over the last couple of years knew about this and other projects that are forthcoming. So they've built up sort of a reserve for these type of projects based on the user fees. And then they'll probably go in a little bit more into for the next couple of years, whether they elect to bond it, which I believe that's what they're going to do, then it might get spread out over more. But each year they'll set and they've had a 5-year window or even a 10-year window with another consultant where they look at the user fees, and so they don't hit the users with a significant increase. They spread it out more, and this is part of their capital projects plan. Sure.
Any other questions? Representative Patisse?
Frank Patisse, District 10. Hey, Bill. My question was, do you know what the maintenance costs are of the stormwater pumps? And also, who is paying for that over time? Is it WPCA or DPW? Or?
Yeah, no, it will be the treatment plant. As far as the maintenance costs, I don't have that with me. I would think that, as with anything else, the first 10 years there's going to be very little maintenance. After that, it might slowly, go up. Obviously, you have to run it through a couple of tests, and you have the standard maintenance and that you would need. Unfortunately, I don't have those figures in front of me, but I would figure it's probably 10% at most of an annual cost.
Okay.
At most.
And it's WPCA who's
Yeah,
paying for that? Okay.
yeah, that's. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Further questions? Representative Lopez?
Hi, Erin Lopez, District 2. This might seem like a silly question because you're talking about corrugated steel sheeting going around the outside. How high is this going to be? And is this, I guess I'm just wondering what it's going to look like to people who live around there, like what they're going to see when this goes up. Obviously, we need it, you know, for safety reasons and everything, but I'm just wondering if when this goes up, what people are going to think of, you know, what they're seeing.
On my timeline, I did not mention it because it did involve financing, but they did meet with the neighborhood, and there is going to be a landscaping kind of plan that I think they've agreed to. I don't know the details of that, but I do know there is some landscaping that is going to be part of the project.
Further questions? Representative Gerber?
Thank you for mentioning that. Are there any potential negative impacts to the landowners of water coming in and sort of getting stuck at the wall and then washing back? Are they concerned about that?
We've had some hydraulic analysis on that. I don't have the details in front, but it's such a large wetland area, and you got to keep in mind that for the water to start, when it starts hitting the wall, it's probably going to be at like elevation 11 or 12, which already means that Fairfield Beach, some portions of Fairfield Beach Road are in trouble already, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm just wondering whether part of the issue that they might have is their insurance premiums going up, or issues.
Oh
with
no,
FEMA.
not from this. And
Okay.
as part of the DEP permit, they had to submit information to make sure that there was no adverse impact from this
Okay,
project.
thank you, Bill.
Further questions? Seeing none, thanks, Bill.
Just one little promo. On Thursday, because Jay mentioned the traffic, we're still applying for additional grants on what we'd call Phase 3, which would be where that project, Kings Highway, stopped pretty much right around here, Ville Avenue, to go to the Bridgeport line. And we have another project, the Post Road Circle Study, and that's District 7. So I have some cards if anybody wants to. That's this Thursday, and again, just like everything else, there'll be members of MetroCog there, perhaps a member or two of the state. And although this is just for a study, we're going to use that study for future years to get grant money. And obviously, a good turnout shows that the town is concerned about the problems. And then MetroCog is usually the one that doles out the grant money. That would make a good impression. So. Certainly, if you're in a District 4 area, District 7 area, or if you think that the Post Road Circle from the area from North Benson to Shoreham Village Drive needs improvement, perhaps you can attend, and if you can't, there's a website that you could fill out a survey on. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Bill. Okay, so we will, that's the agenda for the joint discussion, so we'll break up into our subcommittees, and you can find your chair.